Here with reaction, author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Unfreedom of the Press, hosts the #1 show Sunday nights, 8 p.m. right here on the Fox News Channel. Life, Liberty, Levin. I call him the Great One. You know, Great One, it's been 3.5 years of this hate. These lies, smears, besmirchments, conspiracy theories. They've got it wrong. They got it wrong again. And we have all the evidence.
Yep. Well, you know, their great candidate, Joe Biden. First of all, I want to tell the President and Vice President, thank you for everything you're doing. I can see on your faces how hard you're working. God bless you. And thank God Joe Biden's not in there. He'd be calling in the nation's top proctologist. He wouldn't know what the hell's going on. Anyway, I have some questions that I wanted to ask these doctors if I were there at the press conference. Very serious questions that have been concerning me. This mitigation issue, as an example, they tell you to hunker down. I want to know, how long are we supposed to hunker down till? Every single human being doesn't get the virus or can't get the virus? Because this is a very important question. And what happens after we're done hunkering down? Doesn't that mean millions of people never had the virus because they successfully hunkered down? Doesn't that mean millions of people will be highly susceptible to getting it again or getting it a first time? They're not developing an immunity. In fact, tens of millions of Americans, as a result of this mitigation that Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx are focused on, will not have developed any immunity to this. Isn't this why, Dr. Fauci, if I'm asking him questions, you keep saying this will be seasonal? Don't you really mean mitigation today eliminates the herd immunity necessary for this society to kill the virus broadly, once and for all? Isn't this why you say in the future, don't shake hands? Aren't you really saying in the future, don't touch surfaces, doorknobs, tabletops, because you know that shaking hands is fine if both people have had the virus. But if somebody hasn't and somebody does, then that virus will be obviously traveling along. And so that applies to any surface then. So it's an acknowledgement when I listen carefully to what Fauci and Birx say, that even this period of time, what they're suggesting is not going to address this virus for the full period. Your mitigation strategy accounts for none of this. Why are you unwilling to acknowledge that there are businesses today, I've asked both these doctors, that can mitigate and remain open and encourage governors and mayors to allow them to do so? You never even address this issue. Why aren't you issuing guidelines to states and localities to help them do that? There's thousands of small businesses, medium-sized businesses, large businesses who can chew gum and walk at the same time, who can mitigate and remain open. They're there now. We see them. What happens, I would ask the doctors, to societies when there's 10, 20, 25% unemployment, hundreds of thousands of businesses closures, home foreclosures, bankruptcies? What happens to the healthcare system then? We're going through this now. What happens to the quality of medical care? Death rates, etc. Obviously, they skyrocket. Are you tracking the number of people who might have lived but for the directive against so-called elective surgery? Individuals with heart disease, cancer, diabetes, etc. What are the number of suicides so far, February and March, that have occurred? We have no idea. How many people who had the coronavirus are living today because they used hydroxychloroquine? Are they tracking that? They've been very, very ambiguous about this. I think it's a perfectly good question. I would ask Dr. Birx, you're the top modeler there. Have you been using the same model from the start? You've said in the course of 20 days that 1.5 to 2.1 million people could have died without mitigation. A week ago, you said 100,000 to 240,000. Now, around 60,000. There's something terribly wrong with the model, not just the data. And you say this is due to mitigation. That's one of the reasons it's come down significantly. Maybe so. But 3 weeks ago, there was a brilliant Stanford professor, an expert by every definition, who wrote a public piece that the data you're using is faulty. It's not accurate. And his conclusion 3 weeks ago is that the death rates that you're talking about were wildly off. So why is he right and why were you wrong? Another professor from Yale, again, another top expert and known as such, said 3 weeks ago that what you should be focusing on is the vulnerable populations in the vulnerable communities, rather than the entire nation, which has enormous societal, cultural, and economic impact, which we're now seeing take place. Why were you right and why was he wrong? Some governors have attempted to do exactly that, and to fairly good outcomes. The governor of Florida, the governor of Texas, the governor of Georgia have all been working kind of on that model and have nothing like what's going on in New York and some of these other areas, Louisiana. And I want to talk about the economy quickly.
Real quick, Mark.
To be clear, President Trump hasn't shut a single business. The governors do. So I want to ask the Maduro Republicans and Democrats in Congress, massive deficit spending. Can you name one country, just one, today or in the past, that has grown and created jobs through massive deficit spending inflation? I can name 20 that haven't. Cut it out. Get the people back to work. Open up these states. These businesses can walk and chew gum at the same time. That's it.
Great one. Thank you. Mark Levin, each Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern.